At the holiday banquet, my grandfather said, "Glad you're thriving with the mentorship fund we built." I blinked. What fund? My father froze. My mother went pale. Then my cousin whispered, "You didn't know?" The night started warm, polished, and just a little too formal for my liking. My name's Ethan. I'm 21 years old. I live in a shared studio apartment in St. Louis and just finished a brutal summer internship at a software firm that paid less than minimum wage once you factored in all the unpaid overtime. I was tired. Tired in the way that settles into your bones and stays there. The banquet hall was lit with chandeliers that made everything look gold. The kind of event where everyone wore clothes that fit too well and said, "We should catch up sometime," without meaning it. This was the annual recognition dinner for my grandfather's firm. An excuse for my extended family to gather under the banner of business success and clink glasses like everything was perfect. I wore the only blazer I owned, a little too snug in the shoulders and shiny at the elbows. My shoes had scuff marks I couldn't hide, and my shirt collar felt like it was slowly trying to strangle me. I hadn't eaten all day to avoid bloating my suit. I smiled through it all. My mom kissed my cheek and complimented my sharp look. My dad gave me one of those firm, performative shoulder squeezes. My little brother Nate wasn't there. Too busy with something, Mom had said vaguely, which meant he was either hungover or mid-failure on another side hustle. The dinner rolled on with small talk and speeches. Old colleagues of Grandpa's stood up one by one, thanking the firm, reminiscing about the old days. The air buzzed with polite laughter, glasses clinked constantly, and silverware tapped against porcelain in that rhythmic, expensive way. Then Grandpa stood. He tapped his fork against his glass, not that he needed to. The room went still the moment he straightened his spine and gave that proud little half-smile he always did before telling a story. He talked about legacy, about how the company had become a family business in spirit, even if not all of us worked there. He praised his children, my aunts, my dad, for staying close to the firm's heart. Then he started talking about the next generation, my cousins, me. And of course, he said, turning slightly in my direction with a raised glass, "We're so proud of Ethan. Glad to see you're thriving with the mentorship fund." That was the moment the air left the room. Everything froze. Forks paused midair. Someone coughed and tried to cover it with a sip of wine. My eyes darted to my parents. My father blinked rapidly. My mother looked down at her napkin like it had just whispered national secrets. I forced a smile, cheeks stiff. "What mentorship fund?" Grandpa went on, oblivious to the tension he'd detonated. "It's just so wonderful to see how that support paid off. That's exactly why we started the fund, to invest in our own." I nodded slowly, still smiling, while my brain sprinted through everything I thought I knew about my life. No one had ever mentioned a fund. Not once. And in that moment, every missed meal, every declined internship because I couldn't afford to relocate, every dollar I'd stretched over 2 weeks, it all slammed into me like a punch to the gut. Because apparently, there was money, help, support, and I never saw a dime. I don't even remember how the dinner ended. One minute I was standing in that perfectly air-conditioned ballroom, heart pounding behind my ribs, and the next I was outside on the marble terrace gripping the cold railing like it might answer the question echoing in my head. What mentorship fund? I heard the glass doors slide open behind me. "Ethan," my dad said, his voice way too cheerful. "Hell of a dinner, huh?" I turned slowly. He had that familiar look he wore when something went wrong, trying to seem calm while his jaw twitched slightly and his hand wouldn't leave the inside of his suit jacket. "You want to explain?" I asked. What Grandpa meant back there. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "It's complicated." That's never a good sign. Just then, my mom joined us, arms crossed tight across her chest. "Ethan, this isn't the time." "Actually," I cut in, "this is exactly the time." They exchanged a quick look. I knew that look. It was the same one they shared when Nate was failing chemistry but didn't want to admit it. The same one they used when the water got shut off, and they said it was a glitch in the system. Dad sighed. "Okay, the fund. It was something your grandfather set up when you were born." I blinked. "You mean like a college fund?" He shook his head. "No, not college. It was more career-oriented. Every birthday, every holiday, he'd set aside a portion from the family bonus pool. The idea was to help you get a head start, internships, networking, certifications, startup capital, that sort of thing." I stared at him. "Are you serious?" Mom stepped in, voice low. "We didn't want to burden you with expectations, honey. You had enough on your plate." "That's your excuse?" I said, louder than I meant to. "You didn't tell me because you didn't want me to feel pressure?" Dad looked away. "We had to use some of it." "Some." Silence. I took a step forward. "How much is left?" Neither of them answered. "How much of the fund is left, Dad?" He rubbed his eyes. "None." It hit me like a gut punch. "What do you mean, none?" Mom's voice was small. "We didn't use it all at once. It started with the bakery loan, remember? When the lease fell through and we had to pay out of pocket. And then when Nate launched that gaming app, that app crashed in 2 weeks. It had potential, she said quickly. I was shaking now, not from the cold, from everything boiling inside me. All this time, I said, barely keeping my voice steady. I thought we were just scraping by. I thought we were struggling together. Dad flinched. We didn't want you to worry. No, I snapped. You didn't want me to know. Neither of them said a word. I skipped meals. I borrowed suits. I turned down internships because I couldn't afford to relocate. And all that time, you had a fund. My fund. My voice cracked. You gave it to Nate. You bailed out the bakery. And you watched me struggle. Silently. Like it didn't even matter. Mom whispered, we didn't think you'd find out. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, well, you were wrong. Then I walked back inside the ballroom, leaving them standing in the cold. My apartment felt colder than usual when I got home. Maybe it was the busted radiator that never worked right. Or maybe it was the fact that I'd just learned my parents had been lying to me for years. I wasn't sure anymore. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, eyes closed, the weight of the evening pressing down on my chest like a cinder block. The silence inside the room buzzed. My throat felt dry. My hands were still shaking. I kicked off my shoes, loosened the suffocating tie, and sat down at the tiny desk wedged between my kitchenette and the mattress on the floor I called a bed. I powered on my laptop and waited for the screen to blink to life. There was a file I kept, not out of pride, out of survival. I opened it. Ethan, earned income/expense tracker. There it was, line after line of every dollar I'd ever pulled together over the last 3 years. Part-time tech support shifts, freelance back-end work, coding night shifts for a food delivery app that ended up ghosting me on payment. Grants I'd applied for, most denied, a few successful. Even that one $750 essay competition I won during sophomore year. I had saved the confirmation email like it was a trophy. I scrolled through it slowly, bitterly, like flipping through a photo album of every missed moment and every sacrifice no one else had noticed. Every internship I accepted without pay because it built experience. Every night, I worked until 3 in the morning just to afford next month's bus pass. Every job I took during holidays while everyone else went home to their families. I'd done it all because I believed in earning my own way. Because I thought we didn't have a choice. Now I knew the truth. There had been a choice. My parents just made it, without me. They could have eased the weight. A little help with rent. A stipend for food. Money for a train ticket home at Christmas. But they didn't. They let me believe we were broke, that there was nothing to give. And they used the money that was meant for me to bail out a bakery that never turned a profit and a brother who couldn't hold down a single job longer than 6 months. I rubbed my temples and leaned back in my chair, trying to breathe. In the chaos of the last few weeks, there was one thing I hadn't told anyone yet. Not my friends, not my parents. I had a job offer. A real one. A tech firm in Austin had reached out after reviewing a code sample I submitted anonymously online. They wanted to fly me out, put me up in housing, start me on a salary that made my eyes blur when I first saw it. I was going to surprise my parents with the news. Make them proud. But now it just felt like one more thing they didn't deserve to hear. The next morning, I didn't go to class. Didn't check my email. Didn't return my parents' messages. 3 missed calls. 2 half-hearted texts. Instead, I called a number my grandfather had given me years ago, back when I was still in high school, and he was trying to encourage me to take an interest in how money works. At the time, I figured he just wanted to teach me about compound interest and retirement accounts. Now, I was dialing it for something much bigger. Westwell Financial. This is Dana. Hi. I'm looking for Henry Caldwell. He used to work in. Dana chuckled. You must be Ethan. I blinked. Yeah. He's retired, but he still comes by the office. You're his favorite topic when he visits. Hang on, I'll see if he's in. A few minutes later, a familiar voice came through. Ethan, you finally decided to call an old man. Huh? Hey, Mr. Caldwell. I need help. He heard it in my voice. The way it cracked, the way the words hung in the air like they were made of glass. Come by this afternoon. Conference room B. Ask for me at the front. By 2 o'clock, I was sitting across from him, a man in his 70s with sharp eyes and a calm, deliberate voice. He didn't ask me to explain everything. Just enough. Your grandfather set up a restricted mentorship fund under your name. Contributions were made quarterly. His stipulation was that it only be used for career development. No vacations, no luxuries, strictly to help you launch. And my parents? I asked. He nodded grimly. They were named as temporary custodians until you turned 21. A standard clause. But it seems they started withdrawing early. Small amounts at first, then larger. He pushed a folder across the table. Inside were withdrawal records, spreadsheets, bank transfers, Every transaction from the fund, complete with signatures, dates, and brief notes. 6 years ago, he said quietly. That's when it shifted. The largest transaction was from 3 years ago. $18,000, marked Family Emergency Business Expense. Another was labeled N. Thomas, Early Entrepreneur Support. My brother. I stared at the pages like they were written in another language. They drained the account. He nodded. I'm afraid so. But that's not the end of it. What do you mean? Because this fund wasn't just personal. It was corporate-backed. I looked up. The Mentorship Initiative was part of your grandfather's executive legacy project. That money was matched annually by the company as part of a tax-protected incentive for grooming next-gen leadership. That makes it subject to compliance. I sat up straighter. So they broke company policy? They did worse. They misused company-reserved funds and failed to disclose the activity. I swallowed hard. What happens now? He folded his hands. You have options. You could file a formal complaint with the compliance board. Let the internal investigation run its course. If the board finds evidence of misappropriation, they'll have to act. Even if it's family? Henry's voice didn't waver. They stopped being just family the minute they signed company funds over to themselves under your name. That evening, back in my apartment, I printed every document he gave me, created backups, sorted everything into a neat, labeled folder. Then I opened the firm's internal portal. Complaint submission, ethics and financial misconduct. Category: unauthorized withdrawal from restricted corporate funds. Involved parties: Thomas Sr. and Lydia Thomas. Related fund: Ethan Thomas Mentorship Initiative. Supporting evidence: attached. I hovered over the submit button. Then I clicked. 3 days later, I heard the knock just after midnight. It wasn't frantic. It was sharp, rhythmic. The kind of knock that comes from someone who's already rehearsed what they're about to say. I looked through the peephole and sighed. My dad. He stood there in a windbreaker, holding a manila envelope in one hand and rubbing the back of his neck with the other. I opened the door just enough to let the hallway light hit his face. You got a minute? He asked. I didn't move. This really can't wait until morning? He glanced down the hall, like he expected someone else to be watching. I'd rather not talk about this on the phone. I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me. We stood in the dim hallway, just the two of us, surrounded by cracked paint and humming fluorescents. He looked tired. I didn't care. I saw the submission, he started, voice low. The legal board flagged me this morning. Ethics review. Compliance audit. Your name was on the report. I didn't say anything. He exhaled. You really want to do this? Drag us all through this mess? You already dragged us through it, I said. You just didn't expect to get caught. He blinked like I'd slapped him. Ethan, he said carefully, this isn't black and white. Your mother and I did what we had to do. Nate's business was falling apart. We were trying to keep things stable. The bakery. You could have told me. I cut in. At any point. You could have said, hey, there's a fund here. We had to dip into it. But instead you let me work myself raw. You let me think we were broke. I didn't want you to worry. No, I said. You didn't want to deal with me asking questions. He ran a hand down his face. You've always been the strong one, Ethan. You didn't need the help. I felt something in me tighten. There it was. The sentence I had heard in so many forms since I was a kid. After every skipped gift, every passed over opportunity. You've always been the strong one. You didn't help me, I said quietly, because it was easier not to. He didn't deny it. He looked at the manila envelope in his hand, then handed it to me. I pulled the withdrawal reports, he said. All of them, even the ones we didn't submit to the firm. I took it without opening it. He looked down at his shoes. We didn't think you'd ever find out. We figured you'd make it on your own. You'd succeed. Move on. Forget. I stared at him, almost laughing. You planned for me to forget, I said. You counted on it. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then I turned, opened my apartment door, and walked inside. Good night, Dad. I didn't wait to see if he said it back. The following morning, I sat on the edge of my bed with the manila envelope still unopened. I knew what was inside: transaction records, unauthorized signatures, and probably a few passive-aggressive notes my dad thought would justify their decisions. But I didn't need to read it to know what had happened. I had lived it. By the time the sun rose high over the neighboring rooftops, I was back at my desk, the soft hum of my laptop fan filling the room like white noise. I opened the firm's internal portal again, same as I had a few nights earlier, and uploaded the final documents: account ledgers, withdrawal logs, Henry Caldwell's signed summary. The last thing I attached was a scanned copy of the envelope my dad had handed me. No commentary, just evidence. Then I filled in the last field of the form. Intent: submit formal complaint for financial misconduct involving restricted mentorship fund. It asked if I understood the gravity of the claim. I checked the box. Did I want to remain confidential? No. Then it was done. The moment I hit submit, a notification popped up. Your complaint has been sent to the Corporate Ethics and Compliance Board. You will be contacted within 72 hours. I leaned back and closed my eyes. For once, there wasn't a single part of me that hesitated. The next day, my phone rang around dinner time. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the voice on the other end was painfully familiar. Ethan, my mother said. I didn't say anything. She took that as permission to go on. I saw the report. Your father told me. There was a pause, and then her voice softened into that sad, disappointed tone she used when she was trying to make guilt sound like concern. Sweetheart, please, don't do this. We can fix this quietly. You don't have to destroy everything. Our names, our reputation. Stop, I said. She fell silent. You destroyed it when you stole from me. The line went quiet for several seconds. I never wanted it to go this far, she finally said, her voice cracking. I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered every lie. Every time I asked if we were okay financially, and she changed the subject. Every time she praised Nate's entrepreneurial spirit, while pretending my exhaustion was some personal flaw. I'm not your safety net anymore, I said. And I'm not your secret. Then I hung up. No yelling. No drama. Just silence. And this time, it was mine. I met Grandpa at a quiet cafe near the river, the kind of place where nobody wore suits and no one seemed in a rush. He was already there when I arrived, sitting alone at a corner table with a coffee cup between his hands. No tie, just a cardigan and that old St. Louis Cardinals cap he wore when he didn't feel like impressing anyone. He looked up as I approached, and for the first time in a long while, I couldn't read his expression. Sit, he said gently. I did. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The clatter of plates and soft indie music filled the space between us. Then he reached into his coat pocket and slid a folded check across the table. I stared at it for a moment before opening it. $10,000. Grandpa, I don't. I know, he said, waving off my protest. I know you didn't ask, and I know it's nowhere near what that fund should have given you. I swallowed hard, folding the check again without looking at it. It's not about the money. I know, he repeated, quieter this time. He leaned back, rubbing his thumb along the rim of the coffee cup. When you were born, I thought I was being smart. I thought, let's build something. Let's give this boy a running start. So I talked to our accounting team, set up that fund, matched contributions from the bonus pool. I even added extra during the good years. I listened in silence. I wanted it to feel like legacy, he said, like something to build a future on, not just for you, but as a signal to the whole family that we take care of our own. So why put it under their management? I asked. Why not keep it separate? He looked down. For a long time, he didn't answer. Then he said, because I trusted my son. The weight of that sentence hung between us. Heavy. Final. I thought I was doing the convenient thing, he continued. Keeping it simple. Letting your parents manage it since you were still a kid. Figured they'd tell you about it when the time was right. I shook my head. They never intended to. I know that now. His jaw tightened. He wasn't angry in the way my father got, yelling and defensive. Grandpa's anger was quieter, more focused, like a blade instead of a hammer. I've already spoken to the board, he said. The investigation's moving forward, and I've called the estate attorney. I looked up. Why? Because I'm rewriting my will, he said. I don't make the same mistake twice. He nodded toward the check. That's just a start. Symbolic. But from now on, nothing that belongs to you will pass through anyone else's hands. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. And for the first time in a long while, Grandpa reached across the table and gave my shoulder a squeeze. I'm sorry, Ethan, he said. I should have protected you better. This time, I didn't argue, because he wasn't wrong. The holiday gala at Westwell was one of those events that tried hard to look effortless. Soft jazz in the background, catered hors d'oeuvres passed around by waiters in crisp black aprons, crystal lights wrapped around faux pine garlands. A mix of old money and new power, where family and business blurred together so seamlessly, you couldn't tell where the firm ended and the bloodline began. I walked in wearing a charcoal gray blazer, thrifted but pressed. My shoes were clean. No tie, no flash. Just me. Confident, quiet, present. No one stopped me. No one questioned why I was there. I was on the list. In fact, I belonged there more than some of the people I passed on the way to the ballroom. I saw them before they saw me. My parents. My father stood near the podium, a scotch in hand, talking to a few board members with that rehearsed mix of warmth and authority. My mother hovered nearby, wearing a soft green dress she only pulled out for nights when image really mattered. They were smiling, acting like everything was fine, as if nothing had happened. As if their son hadn't filed a misconduct complaint that would soon alter the entire direction of their professional reputations. I didn't approach them. Not yet. Instead, I mingled. Quiet hellos. A few firm handshakes. Most people didn't know what was brewing behind the scenes yet, but the rumors were starting. I could see it in the way a few of the older partners glanced at my dad and then looked away too quickly. When the awards segment began, I stepped back to the edge of the ballroom and waited. My father was announced as the speaker for the Family and Leadership Legacy toast, a predictable move. He took the microphone, adjusted his cufflinks, and smiled like a man who still thought he had control. This firm, he began, was built on more than just business. It was built on trust, on family values, on the integrity of the generations who carry our name and our vision. My jaw clenched. He went on, praising the team, the leadership, the supposed honor of growing up inside a legacy like Westwell. I caught Grandpa sitting 2 rows back, arms folded, face like stone. When the applause finished, my father stepped down and rejoined my mother. That was my cue. I walked calmly to the front, past the podium, past the half-filled wine glasses and the polite smiles. I opened my leather folder and began handing out copies, page by page, to the board members seated at the VIP table. A summary packet, the one I'd spent the last week compiling, labeled clearly on the front. Summary of unauthorized fund use, Ethan Thomas mentorship account, with dates, signatures, and charts that left little room for doubt. No big speech, no dramatic outburst, just truth, printed in black and white, handed over with steady hands and a calm nod. My father turned, confusion flickering into panic as he saw what I was doing. He started to step forward, but one of the partners raised a hand, not toward me, but to stop him. I turned to leave as the murmurs began. No explosions, no shouting, just the slow, quiet sound of a carefully constructed image falling apart. 2 days after the gala, I got the call. The internal audit had been launched. Officially, my father was temporarily removed from all firm-facing responsibilities, pending further review. That was the language the HR email used. Clean, clinical, but I knew what it meant. He was done, at least for now. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat there at my desk and stared at the screen while the news settled over me like dust. An hour later, the backlash began. First, an email from my mother. Subject, please. Message, Ethan, don't do this. We made mistakes, but this is bigger than us. Your father built his life here. You're tearing it down. Please don't ruin our names. I read it twice before deleting it. Then my phone lit up with a message from Nate. Nate, congrats, man. You finally did it. You tore apart your own family so you could play hero. Hope it was worth it. No apology. No recognition of what he took from me. Just bitterness. I didn't reply. Later that night, I walked past a mirror in my apartment and barely recognized the expression on my face. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was grief. I missed a version of my family that never really existed. I kept thinking back to holidays where I thought we were all close. Game nights where we laughed too hard. Even simple dinners where no one had their phone out. I used to believe those memories were proof that we had something unshakable. Now I saw them differently. Not as lies, but as a fragile fantasy I clung to because it made the loneliness easier to bear. I had been raised to believe that loyalty meant silence. That if you loved someone, you protected them, even from the truth. But love without accountability isn't love. It's control. And for years, I let myself be controlled. I didn't cry. Not that night. But I felt a kind of hollow I hadn't known before. Like I'd carved out a piece of myself just to make room for the damage they left behind. Around midnight, I got one more message from Grandpa. Grandpa, proud of you. That took strength most people don't have. You did what I should have done a long time ago. That one stayed. I screenshotted it, not because I needed proof, but because I needed something that still felt solid. Something real. I closed my laptop. Sat there in the dark. This wasn't victory. This was what it felt like to tell the truth and be left with silence. And maybe that was okay. Maybe silence was the first real thing I'd ever had. The check from Grandpa cleared 5 days later. $10,000, a symbolic gesture, he'd said, but it felt like more than that. It felt like someone was finally putting value on the years I spent holding myself together when no one else did. I used half of it to pay off the last of my student loan debt. The rest, I moved into a new account. My name only. No joint access, no parental overseers, no family-friendly signatures at the bottom of withdrawal forms. Just mine. A week after that, I packed everything I owned, which honestly wasn't much, into the back seat of a rented Corolla and drove south to Austin. I had taken the job, the offer I'd kept quiet about for months, waiting for some moment to share it with pride. I used to imagine telling my parents over dinner, waiting for their stunned silence to turn into congratulations. But now, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need the applause anymore. The apartment the firm set me up with was small but clean. White walls, modern fixtures, a view of a side street where people actually walk their dogs in the morning. I hung a single photo on the wall, me and Grandpa, from the night after we met at the cafe. We weren't smiling for the camera, just sitting across from each other, talking. No fake smiles. No pretending. Just truth. My first day at the new job felt like breathing fresh air. No one there knew anything about my family. No one had heard of the Thomas name or the Mentorship Fund. I wasn't somebody's son or somebody's problem. I was just Ethan, and that was enough. Some nights, the hurt still surfaced, like when I passed a bakery and thought of all the money they dumped into one, or when I saw brothers walking together and wondered what it might have felt like to be chosen for once instead of sacrificed. But I didn't let it own me. I let it pass. Because the truth was, what they stole from me wasn't just money. It wasn't internships or opportunity. It was belief. Belief that I was worth investing in. That someone would look at me, tired, worn down, but trying, and still choose to back me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And now I was taking that belief back. Not from them. From myself. I went grocery shopping without doing mental math in the aisle. I stopped skipping meals. I bought a real mattress. And when the firm handed me my first paycheck, I didn't send it to anyone but the landlord. Starting over didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing what to carry with me. And I chose truth. I chose peace. I chose me.